Oh, Krishna, I need one of those.
What's that? Oh, you want me? I sent it to you all.
Oh, why didn't I get that? Well, it's
Really? I didn't. Okay. Oh,
I probably didn't open up all the attachments.
I know. I know.
You want me to send it to you?
Then I have to log off and log back on if Shantae doesn't mind if I do that. I think, yeah, send it to me. Maybe I won't. Yeah, send it to me. Okay.
Or put it in the chat.
I'm not savvy fast enough to do that.
That's okay, Barbie. It's
Okay.
Barbie, you look beautiful. I love those colors.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Very vibrant.
Very scared.
You just say anything, they'll love you. Don't worry.
Oh, Lord. This is not my thing. Oh, hey, Rebecca. Oh, okay, you see how I am? I'm so, I can't even respond to her. I'm like,
Oh, that's it. I thought that was just a regular background of an attachment. I got it, Krishna. I like the one that Denny has too. I'm gonna use that one.
You instructed me, so Krishna, I try to follow instructions.
Yeah,
thank you all. All right, so we are all set. People are in. We're live.
Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, Krishna, I'm fine. I just multitask while you're doing that.
All right, we're ready to get started. And so, Dean Postmiss, you're on.
Oh, I'm first. Great. Well, I am so delighted to attend my very first homecoming. I wish it could have been in person, but fingers crossed, we'll be together next year and we have weather like today, so not the snow that you all were talking about. I've heard from our alumni board about the evolution of this event since its inception and since 2006, so that's 15 years ago. I look forward to how we can continue to grow homecoming and our celebration of National Social Work Month in the years ahead. In case you didn't know it, the School of Social Work is turning 60 years old this year. Just think, and this ties into some of the polling and quizzing we were doing earlier, 60 years ago, the UN General Assembly condemned the apartheid in South Africa. President Kennedy established the Peace Corps, of which some of their alumni came to the School of Social Work. The Soviets built the Berlin Wall, dividing East and West Germany 60 years ago. The Freedom Riders traveled throughout the South to test and promote integration measures, and unfortunately many were beaten for their efforts. The CIA launched an unsuccessful effort to overthrow Castro in the Bay of Pigs. On the entertainment side, West Side Story is a hit play, and the song "The Lion Sleeps Tonight" was at the top of the charts. I can just hear now if people were on that, have them start singing that song in their head. Also 60 years ago, Pampers was introduced. The average cost of a new car was $2,850. And former President Barack Obama was born. So the theme for our celebratory 60 years and for this homecoming is facing our past and transforming our future. This theme during this time of dual pandemics of COVID and racial injustice captures the responsibility of our school to face our past by celebrating the good and the not so good legacy of our School of Social Work. But it also captures how we need to transform the school to respond to these dual pandemics, along with other injustices that plague our communities in Baltimore, in the state of Maryland, and beyond. To that end, last week, I met with the Alumni Association Board and asked them to help record a strong written history of our many outstanding alumni, including our 50 heroes from our 50th anniversary that was done 10 years ago, along with the many outstanding award winners our Alumni Association has honored at past homecomings, and of course, those who we honor today. I will also work with the alumni to focus on key issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion, to learn what the school and the profession did well in the past and how we could have been better as we prepare for the future. Currently, the University of Maryland, Baltimore and the School of Social Work have launched strategic planning initiatives. I'm proud to say that I was selected to be the co-chair of the UMB Strategic Planning Steering Committee, and proud to say that we have a robust steering committee at the school with Regina Sally Cooper representing the alumni. She is joined on that committee by our UMB and UMBC faculty, staff, students at the MSW, PhD, and BSW level, as well as a member from our board of advisors. These efforts of facing our past and transforming our future will culminate in events this fall. You will hear more about the plan in the months ahead. In the meantime, thank you so much for joining us today. I look forward to meeting many of you in person soon. And now I'm happy to introduce your Alumni Association Board President, Lori James Towns, MSW from the class of 1991. Lori, it's all yours.
Thank you so much, Dean Postmus. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We are so excited to launch the 16th annual homecoming event, but only our second virtual homecoming. I am Lori Jamestown, MSW class of 1991 and the president of our school's Alumni Association Board of Directors. I would first like to take this time to thank Dean Postmus, who is joining us today. Excuse me one second, sorry. As she mentioned, for her first home, this is her first homecoming. And on behalf of the Alumni Board of Directors, we welcome her and look forward to working with her as she leads the school into its 60th year of educating future generation of social workers. We hope that you will join us for our 60th anniversary events throughout the months ahead. I'm also honored this morning to represent the school's Board of Advisors, chaired by Howard Silence. As social workers, we take great pride in our high-touch profession that provides us with an opportunity to meet face-to-face, to connect and build rapport with people, which is why our annual in-person homecoming has been a great way for us to connect, network with former classmates and colleagues. Although we all have become more versed in navigating virtual spaces, this allows us to connect with our alums beyond the Baltimore region. And I must say, I look forward to when we can gather in person again. I also want to take this time to acknowledge National Social Work Month and the school's annual Gifts campaign. As we use this time to celebrate and honor the work we all do and you all do, let's take this time to support the next generation of social workers by making a gift to the Student Emergency Fund. This fund provides limited financial assistance to currently enrolled students that are experiencing unforeseen financial hardships. This pandemic has been challenging for many of us, including our students. There is a link in the chat if you are interested in making a gift. We encourage you to do so. As many of you know, homecoming also includes our annual Alumni Association Awards. And since we are not able to enjoy a great lunch together while honoring our fellow alumni, I want to take a moment to recognize them today. Honoring the accomplishments of the alumni honoring the accomplishments of our alumni is actually one of my favorite things to do in serving on this board. Please join me in recognizing and congratulating our fellow alumni and future alumni as well. Alex Blyweiss, Outstanding Student of the Year Award. Kathleen Williams, Alumni, class of 05, the Alumni Recognition Award. Are we gonna wait for the next slide to proceed?
I'm sorry, Lori. I was having some technical difficulties.
That's quite okay.
Okay, can you all see this? I'm sorry, the first slide.
Mm-hmm.
You can see Alex? Okay, great.
Okay, so the next award goes to Kathleen Williams, the class of 05, who is being recognized for the Alumni Recognition Award.
Okay. And can you see, I'm sorry, can you see Kathleen?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's not. Oh, wow. There we go. I'll try to.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Gotta love Zoom. Hold on one second, please. I just want to make sure everyone can get there. I want to make sure we shine a light on.
I
So
agree.
give me 1 second.
Take your time. We all know that we have to be prepared for Zoom to have its own mind. There you go, Krishna. Perfect. All right. So there we have Kathleen Williams, our class of '05, being recognized as with the Alumni Recognition Award, USG Alumni Recognition Award. And our next awardee is Jessica Cali, who is the class of 2019, and she is being recognized as the Outstanding Recent Graduate Award. Krishna, it looks stuck again.
Oh.
Okay,
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Maybe minimize your screen, see what that does. There we go. All right. Again, Jessica Cali, class of 2019, Outstanding Recent Graduate Awardee. And Chris, I'll just pause for a second and give people a chance to read a little bit about our awardees.
Okay.
I think that one thing everyone will see between our awardees and our speakers is how diverse our profession really is and how amazing and awesome it is. Then we'll go to the next awardee, which is Heather Joy Silver. And while Krishna is expanding, we'll just wait. But Heather Joy Silver is the class of 2007, and Heather is being recognized for Innovation in Social Work Award. As you can see, Heather is being recognized for her work starting the Bill Sweeney Perinatal Care Fund and publishing the Perinatal Palliative Care and Conversations in Palliative Neonatal and Pediatric Palliative Care. Amazing. Krishna, I'm ready when you are. Go to the next awardee.
Okay. So it looks like there's a delay in every time I click. So that's what the problem is. So sorry.
It's okay. Julia Frank Mcglammery, the class of 2009. And she is also being recognized for Innovation in Social Work Award, 16 years working with older adults and adults with disabilities, member of the Elder and Vulnerable Adult Abuse Task Force as well. You can go ahead and click. And this is fine, Krishna. It gives people a chance to read about our amazing awardees.
Thank you, everyone, for being so patient.
I mean, of course, you're on here with 86 other social workers who want to just jump in and help you. And next we have Don Vince, the class of 77. Mr. Vince is being recognized as Field Instructor of the Year with a veteran with over 30 years of child welfare experience and over 20 years as the School of Social Work Clinical Instructor for Title IV-E for Public Child Welfare. You could click whenever you can. I would encourage, if you guys know any of the awardees, to reach out to them and recognize them. It's so hard that we're not able to be in person to give hugs and to take pictures and to really give them their due recognition. But we will make up for that in the future.
Also, next time I'll have music in the background.
Oh, I could sing. No, I'm just joking. I can't.
Oh, can you?
No,
I was going to commission David Flinchball, but I didn't know what to do.
I can't. So when is it still being delayed?
Yeah, it's like a delay in every click. So it doesn't really say, I don't know why it doesn't click so fast, like soon as you click on the next person. So I don't know, but this one is taking even longer. So
It's
sure. Here we go.
okay. So why don't you go ahead and click now? So David,
I did.
okay. David Brainard is being recognized for the class of 2000. He's from the class of, 1979 for the Emeritus Award, 40-year career in child welfare social work. And I know that fellow alumni board members want to just give David shouts on the chat for leading us as well and being a part of the leadership of the alumni board, serving 2 terms. David, we honor you this morning. Is David on here with us today as well?
I believe he is.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, David, and all other awardees.
It's the last slide, so let's see
All right.
if it comes up.
Okay.
All right, there we go.
Okay. And Captain Malaysia Herrera, the class of 2002, who serves currently as the U.S. Department of Defense Health Agency, serves as DoD Commission Corp liaison, and served as special assistant to the U.S. Surgeon General, is being honored as Alumni of the Year with the Alumni of the Year award. So thank you guys. We appreciate Krishna. Thank you so much. Man, do we have some outstanding awardees this year that is going to continue to make us proud in the field. Krishna, thank you so much. I know that's nerve-wracking, so hats off to you.
Well, thank you.
And hats off to you in general for all the work that you do behind the scenes. You are, Krishna, if you guys don't know, is the force behind the Alumni Association. Is always there with us, leads and guides us, and provides us with uncomparable support. So thank you so much, Krishna.
Thank you.
We appreciate everyone taking the time out of your busy workday, from homeschooling, which you may be enjoying right now, not doing that a little bit, volunteering and spending some time with us to celebrate our 60th anniversary of the University of Maryland School of Social Work, and to discuss topics that will address our theme, facing our past, transforming our future, in relation to the social work profession. And now, without further ado, I would love to introduce you to our first speaker, Barbie Johnson-Lewis, who is the current NASW Maryland Board President and chairs their SWUR committee. Barbie has her own clinical practice in Columbia, Maryland. We are happy and also honored to have her here to share her experience, her expertise concerning social work in the community. Barbie, I'm excited to hear you, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And good morning. So I am honored to be here to speak to you during the celebration of the School of Social Work's 60th anniversary. I do have a confession. I didn't go to Maryland for School of Social Work. I went to Virginia Commonwealth University. But however, I'm now involved in your social worker community. I am now a faculty field liaison, and I am honored to be here. And I thank Kathleen Williams and the School of Social Work for this invitation. The School of Social Work heard the call for exclusive and diverse content and has come a long way in social justice advocacy with courses, curriculum, and programming. It is good to see us moving in a direction that is working to dismantle racism. I know this is a celebratory occasion while acknowledging the strides that have been made. I wish to challenge you to keep being innovative and inspiring in the face of racism, injustices that we see often, much too often, in the work as social workers. And I think we have seen enough of the horrors and traumas that occur. Then we should ask ourselves, why isn't social work engaging, transforming communities? The word community is used a lot in our profession. The term is overused and it seems to have lost its meaning. Today, I hope to address the disconnect that we experience as social workers in our misunderstanding of community. This misunderstanding comes from our larger systematic structural issues that often get mistaken for policy. We are confused by the rigid standards that are placed for people and families to receive services that causes division among people and families. Because without cohesiveness, communities will not thrive. They will survive and die, or worse, be forgotten. What is community? There are many definitions of community, and I chose this one because it speaks close to what I see as a simple understanding of community. Communities are distinctive from groups by the fact that they share a common interest, background, or purpose that gives them a sense of cohesion. I understand this definition is rather broad. However, it speaks to including all with common interests, background, and purpose without specifically leaving others out. When you think of community, what do you think of? If we could take a moment and throw words in the chat of things you think of in a community. Like, you know, when you're in elementary school, they ask you who's in your neighborhood, who's in your community. Can we list some words there that we think about, that's places, people that's in our community? Church systems, neighbors, loved ones. We'll do this for a couple more seconds. Teachers. Wow, this is going really fast. Thank you.
Yeah.
Co-workers, connections, shared interests and needs, friends, park, COVID testing, yes.
Yes, Susan.
Dog parks. Any more? School, children, love. Hospitals. What you got there, Lori? What are you seeing? Because this moving fast.
I see Baltimore, all of Baltimore, elders and shared responsibility as well for our community, our children, schools. Yes.
Okay. So what is missing, do you think, from this list? If we could take a look back at the chat of all the words that we put out there, what is missing? What do you think is missing? Conflict, race and equity, trust.
Oh, somebody said maintenance workers and those who work behind the scenes, Barbie.
Yes, yes. What other places are in our community that we think about when we think of community? When we think of a community, what is in a community? What places do we think about? Restaurants, institutions, yes. Okay. Cemeteries, okay. Art galleries, we got it. Look at this. This is great. But what is missing? Why are social work programs and services not seen as part of a community? We think we are when we are able to have a program on the right corner in the right neighborhood, and we tell ourselves that we are part of the community. I understand there are always exceptions. But for the most part, we can say that we aren't as engaged as we think we are. What should this involve in an engagement look like? Let's start with identifying the problem. I live in Columbia, Maryland, in Howard County, and there are a lot of food service type programs that provide food for children and their families in Howard County. Don't get me wrong, I believe in having an abundance of food for everyone. However, the problem is these programs aren't solving the hunger problem. These programs aren't addressing poverty or racism. The Racial Equity Institute would say we would need to go deeper to the groundwater as a means to understand and analyze the community. I learned this concept by participating in workshops designed by co-founders of Changing the Lens, Susanna Haley and Jackie McCoy, both longtime members of the Howard County community, Black women of Howard County community. This is a unique community building organization. They have created workshops that zoom in on the historical truths of racism in this country, as well as in Howard County. They provide excellent resources and most importantly, factual information about how racism became to be in this country. The workshops allow participants to have a thoughtful journey into the understanding of systematic racial and cultural issues that have been woven in the fabric of this society. Racism lives in the groundwater. I would like to provide an example of the concept of groundwater. One of my favorite B movies, you know, the ones that the best to watch on a lazy Saturday afternoon. Well, that movie is Herrera with Matthew McConaughey and Penelope Cruz. Matthew McConaughey, the character Dirk, is somewhat like a modern day treasure hunter. And Penelope Cruz's character, Eva, is a scientist for the World Health Organization. She is researching along with a colleague why people in the villages of Mali were sick with a plague and dying. She eventually finds out that the toxic chemicals were poisoning the well water. Dirk and Eva teamed up to find out who, what, and how the poison was getting into the well water. What they found is a complex operation that is dumping its poisonous chemical waste in the groundwater. This operation is run by the General Kazim, a dictator-type character that teams up with a greedy criminal businessman. Eve. One of the best lines in the movie is given by Kazim when Eve gets scared and is talking to Kazim and tells him that Derek and Eva found out about the poison that is in the drinking water. And Kazim dismisses him and says, "No one cares about Africa." They eventually go to the United States government and tell them if they don't intervene, then the contaminated water will reach the United States water supply. The US government didn't see the importance of stopping this poison from entering the groundwaters of the United States. They said it was Africa's problem. Derek and Eva stopped the horrible killing of the Mali people, only with the help of the community, the villagers that were most affected by this tragedy. We need to reach the groundwater to dismantle racism, the poison that has crippled our communities. As we have witnessed in today's climate, that the opportunity to save our community is now. Because if we don't work to help those to help themselves, then the poison will continue to manipulate, gaslight, and marginalize communities, particularly communities of color. No one cares about Africa. Translation, no one cares about Black and brown people. Side note, although this movie was a fictional story, here are real-time statistics about the South African country, Mali, where the story took place. Mali is one of the poorest countries in the world. Nearly 45% of its population lives below the national poverty line. It would seem that even the writer of the novel that Sahara is based on knew by choosing Mali that the familiarity would be believable, the exploitation of poor Black and brown people, this oppression and racism much too common and accepted in our society. What is community engagement? Audre Lorde said, "Without community, there is no liberation, but community must not mean a shedding of our differences, nor the pathetic pretense that these differences do not exist." I'm a volunteer member of a growing grassroots program called Oakland Mills Leadership, Local Leadership Team, in my neighborhood community of Oakland Mills. Oakland Mills Village has the highest concentration of Black and brown children in Howard County and provides free and reduced lunch more than in any other village in Columbia. And economically, this community has one of the lowest incomes in the county. The person leading this grassroots effort is another Black woman, Keisha Johnson of the Jacaranda Center, which provides services for families and youth within Howard County. She teaches and guides the Oakland Mills community on how to reclaim the community and how to improve the livelihood of the people that reside in Oakland Mills. She has facilitated an environment where the community members can teach themselves, to learn amongst themselves and strengthen their own community. I remember the day that we sat around a table and used our collective voices to create a mission and vision for our community. I felt so proud and connected to everyone in that room because we had a common interest, background, and purpose. We are all representatives of our community, and I would like to share our mission and vision. The mission of Oakland Mills leadership team is to mobilize residents of the Oakland Mills Village to build an equitable, cohesive community where children, youth, and families thrive. And our vision is Oakland Mills Village, where the children, youth, and families are growing, developing, and succeeding. We're looking for and need in our community company leaders, abundant community life, strong families, engaged youth, racial justice and equity, and economic development. I'm not saying this is the only program of its kind, but I am challenging the social workers here today that they commit to engaging in community in ways that would strengthen versus having the fundamental needs compartmentalized by the services that we provide. How do we ensure that our support is from and of that community and not coming from us as professionals? Are we gatekeeping? How do we ensure community voices drive what we do? When we do change to people, they experience it as violence. When people do change for themselves, they experience it as liberation. Rosabeth Moss Kenter. Here's another example of how we have been maybe getting it wrong. Cultural appropriation refers to the use of objects, symbols, elements of a non-dominant culture in a way that doesn't respect the original meaning, give credit to their source, or reinforces stereotypes, or contributes to oppression. Consider a center in a community and its walls are painted in colors of African nations, have pictures of popular influencers of the Black community like Malcolm X, Rosa Parks, Harriet Tubman, of course, Martin Luther King. These persons, objects, items are used to decorate these places of service that we believe are connecting social workers to community. However, no one from the community actually works there or is a member of the board, nor do the employees of the center look like the people they are serving. These are misguided choices that social workers have come to show that they believe they have done enough outreach. And from these choices, we create policies and thus have systematic structural racism baked in our practices. Another example from my experience of our disconnect from the community we serve are mental health clinics and private practitioners. Do you have a relationship with the nearby churches, schools, leaders, the corner mom and pop store? And think about the list that we just made earlier. Do we have connection to these persons and places? Do you have a community of private practitioners that you share information about how your practice can be better to serve the community? It would seem that we may have more work to do by analyzing the groundwater to provide better practices as we have begun to do here at the School of Social Work. I enjoy reading sci-fi novels. Actually, I love reading sci-fi novels. That's pretty much all I read. I have to admit, I struggle with reading nonfiction because, it's boring to me and I have a hard time focusing. However, I find that reading sci-fi novels has taught me a great deal about the human condition and how we relate in the world in the best conditions. It has shown me the impossible and imaginative communities and how they came to be. One writer that does this wonderfully in a beautiful, compelling storytelling is Octavia Butler. When Octavia Butler was interviewed on her story of Parable Sawyer, she was asked the question, Parable Sawyer is, among other things, a coming of age story. What are the most important lessons Lauren, I always say her last name wrong, Olamina learns as she matures? And I'm gonna read what Octavia had said. One of the first lessons Olamina learns is to value community. She learns this as a young girl, learns it without knowing she's learning. Her father's community is her teacher. She cannot agree with her father or other adults when they close their eyes in fear and hope to wait for the return of the good old days. But she can see that the people around her can sustain themselves if they do not find ways to work together. When Olamina's birth community is destroyed, she begins to build another. She doesn't know at first that that's what she's doing, and she's afraid, terrified of potentially dangerous strangers. But she learns to reach out in spite of her fear, to choose the best practice people she can find and bring them together. With her acceptance of Earthseed, she relinquished hope for the supernatural help. She believes that our only dependable help must come from ourselves and from one another. She never develops a things will work themselves out kind of attitude. She learns to be an activist. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Barbie. Sorry, my clicker wasn't working fast enough. Let's thank Barbie in the chat, and we are going to save our questions. So you can either chat me directly with your questions so I can save it easily. You could put it in the question and answer application at the bottom of your screen. And I will definitely open those questions up after we hear from Denny, who is our next speaker. So Denny, why don't you go ahead and turn on your camera? All right.
Well,
All right.
sure will. Absolutely. Good morning, everybody. I would love to build off of Barbie's great great message there about how to use research as a tool to empower.
Denny, while you got your PowerPoint, first of all, I wish I was there where that picture is, but let me do you the honor, please, to introduce you. I want people to hear. It's just a blip. It's just 3 sentences that don't do her justice. But as I introduce Denny Denise Pantello is a 2000 graduate of our PhD program. I believe Krishna said it's the first time that we've had one of our PhD alumni present at a homecoming event. So Denny, thank you so much for being here with us. Our fellow alum, Denny serves as the chief of 2 scientific programs, the Child and Adolescent Services Research Program and the Dissemination and Implementation Research Program at the National Institute of Mental Health. We are happy to hear from her and have her share her expertise in the area, as she said, of social work and research, connecting some of the thoughts and ideas that Barbie had and telling us how she, first of all, manages to direct these 2 amazing programs and also her joy and love for research. Denny, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you so much for letting me.
Thank you, Lori, and thank you, Barbie, for launching us and inspiring us and challenging us to imagine a better day and imagine a new future and how to make and invite social workers into that world of if you want to use research to empower and as a new tool to build your voice and amplify the scientific impact of what we're doing. I have some ideas and I would love to share those with you over the next few minutes because my hope is that I can have some ideas to help you continue to do what you love and how you can use research in daily practice. So because I'm a researcher, I have PowerPoint, such as what we do. And I have, of course, we have the learning objectives here. for our, so I'll be using this kind of as a touchstone throughout, the time together today to kind of make sure we're going along with that. But I'd like to start by sharing a confession that back in the day, I used to hate research. Can anybody relate to that? It was something, it just was not intuitive to me. I didn't understand why validity and reliability made a difference in the lives of people that are suffering in front of me. So I really struggled with that. So I thought it might be helpful to share with you how I came from despising research to where I am now. So kind of tell you a little bit about my journey in social work. I'm a proud social worker like all of you, and I got my master's down the street at Howard University. And then moved on to go to get a doctorate at the University of Maryland School of Social Work. But a lot happened in between there. And what I experienced was I was a clinician. We did part-time clinical practice, but the major part of my work and passion was working in child protective services in Prince George's County Child Protective Services as an investigator, a supervisor, and then I ran a child sexual abuse unit. And as a CPS child maltreatment investigator, I was threatened verbally, physically. I was chased. I was locked out of homes. I was locked into a home once. I had a couple parents, two different parents try to run me over with their cars. Despite the risk and the stress of that job, it was the most important job I ever held. It had such, it made such an impact on keeping kids safe. So from there, I became a supervisor, and then I ran a sex abuse unit. And so it was a continuing unit. And we had a lot of families who we were working with. Once child sexual abuse was confirmed, they needed services to try to reduce the risk of having, a recurrence, as well as trying to treat these kids. And in Prince George's County, there was such a waiting list for therapy. And we looked around and said, hey, we're all clinical social workers. Why don't we provide this treatment? So we wrote research grants and got them awarded. And we were able to hire new staff to start providing individual, group, and family therapy, which was great. It was wonderful. We saw great results. So the neat thing that happened, was if any of you work in child protective services or DSS, there's always a shortage of staff that kind of waxes and wanes. So people would, my bosses would come to me and say, hey, we need your staff to cover for these investigative shortages. And I would have to say, I have to alert our funders to let them know we don't have the staff to do the therapy. Do you want us to lose the money? Which of course they didn't. So they found other people to do this. So I learned my first lesson in research that it allows you not just money, but it also allows you power and influence, that I was able to keep our protective bubble of folks together. So, and people wanted to work with us because we were doing the stuff that we got our master's degree in. It was really exciting, which is a luxury in a Department of Social Services. So, we were able to kind of do this treatment. We saw kids get better, reductions in PTSD and anxiety and depression. The catch is I wasn't sure what we were doing and how it was working. I work with the non-offending moms, and I wanted to know, what are we doing to help moms believe and protect, and why don't others believe and protect? And we worked with young male offenders, young male victims. And a lot of them got better and had great functioning for a couple of years after, but some of them became juvenile offenders, and we just didn't know why. So that's when I realized I needed new skills to answer these and other questions. So that's what got me to the School of Social Work, and that's where I gained a new respect for research. So what I'd like to do is kind of shift gears and highlight some potential strategies that will perhaps, help you as clinicians, administrators, and leaders that you can implement in your daily practice. So some of you are delivering evidence-based treatments. By the way, this list is from NIMH funded. We've developed and funded and tested these evidence-based practices. The catch is delivering it with fidelity, trying to deliver it as it was intended. And we all want to take shortcuts, like for instance, the vaccines. You know, if you get Pfizer vaccine, someday we will all get the vaccine, thank God. But if, you know, the research says 21 days, you can add a few days here and there, but so we don't know if it's good after 40 or 50 days. And that's kind of how these evidence-based treatments, if it says 12 weeks, if you fudge and do 8 weeks, maybe it works, but it's a voltage drop. We don't know if it's going to have the effect that it did when it was tested. So that's really inviting clinicians to deliver evidence-based practices with fidelity, but also enhance your voice by contributing your knowledge and expertise. Participate in advisory boards and learning collaboratives and focus groups and survey development stuff. This is the way that you get your influence into these projects, into these research initiatives, and you're representing the families and clients that you work with. So these are some ways that you can utilize research in your clinical practice. For administrators, using data to enhance staff competency, workforce retention and leadership. For competency and training, there's something called the Cascading Dissemination model that Patty Chamberlain developed years ago in foster care. Well, you all know that as a trainer of training, that this is where you develop a cascading model. You train folks, they train folks, they train folks. This was developed at NIMH. Workforce retention. There's a lot of projects. One is called Project Safe Care, where they teach Child Protective Services staff teach parents to enhance their skills. Well, guess what? By doing that, staff, they saw some wonderful changes with families. Families got better, and staff felt a sense of satisfaction by seeing such improvements, and worker retention was increased. Leadership, there's a leadership package that we're testing called LOC that actually we already have tested it, that enhances leadership skills by doing like personalized, we call 360 assessments using feedback. So these are some ways for administrators. And if you're a policymaker, there's lots of ways you can use data to bring stakeholders together, to create strategic plans and blueprints, to secure money, and to advocate on behalf of your families and clients and communities to change policies and legislation. So these are just some of the strategies that you can use in your daily practice that would, by using research, that hopefully can make a long-term difference. What I'd like to do now is shift gears and invite you into the world I'm in, at the world of social work, the world of the National Institutes of Health, where I work as a program officer. And I'm so fortunate. I oversee 3 different portfolios, research portfolios, and it's about 50 different researchers and projects, of about $25 million. And what I do is I advise researchers, if for instance you're planning to be a researcher and you submit an application, or you're interested in submitting an application, I'd work with you to try to fine tune and sculpt out your concept so that it matches our research priorities. And that way there's that goodness of fit. And then we can get it in as an application. You get your review. Hopefully you get a fundable score after a couple of iterations. And then I advocate on behalf of you to get our institute to fund it. So that's kind of what I do. So if you were a researcher, I would work with you for that. Even if you're not a researcher, it's important that you know what our priorities are, is because information is power. If you know what we're funding, you can bring that information back to your community and say, hey, there's money here. How do we try to find a way? Because if we're not going to get it, somebody else is. And I want social workers to get it. So I want every meritorious application to get it, but I want social workers in the mix. So, let me just give you a quick snapshot of some of our research priorities at NIMH and the division I'm in, Division of Services and Intervention Research. Now, this is a web page. It's awfully messy, but just to cut to the chase. We are interested in suicide prevention. we're doing some, we're making some great strides, but believe me, clearly, we need more great ideas because the rates are just too high. It's just too high. So we need your ideas in this area. We are focused on autism, and that's early detection and referral to service. And the key is trying to get enhanced engagement, because it's tough for folks to continue in their and continue on with treatment when it really needs to be completed. So another area that we really need your help with, and we need great ideas, is mental health equity for diverse and underserved populations. As Barbie was talking about, there's a critical, this is an important need, and we are committed to this, and we want more people who can amplify the voices of the folks that you work with, so that we can make a meaningful impact in this. And then there's a few other priorities, such as optimizing treatments. Can you get 12 weeks down to 8 weeks in a CBT approach or something, and implementation strategies. So in a nutshell, these are some of the priorities at NIMH. What I want to do is kind of give you a little taste of our funding announcements so you have an idea, and then tell you a little bit about a loan repayment program. At NIMH, we have a lot of what we call funding opportunity announcements. These people will call it an FOA. We have a bunch, but I didn't want to give you a fire hose of information. I just wanted to highlight two here first. Reducing the duration of untreated psychosis is something I think is important in the social work field. And also working with families that have acute episodes, or individuals that have acute episodes, and then as they are stabilized, how do you maintain those gains over time? So that's what this second funding announcement is about. The other one I want to bring to your attention is initiation of a mental health family navigator model. Now, we had that active for 3 years. We're in the process of reissuing it again. The reason I'm bringing it to you is this is one that I wrote, and if you read it, it is about social work principles of case management, case coordination, family navigation. We know this model works, but this funding announcement is looking at how. What are the unique components that enhance mental health outcomes? There's probably about 50 different components, but we want to identify as many as we can. So if you're interested in participating in something like this, this will be coming out again soon. The last opportunity I wanted to talk to you about is this is a notice that just came out just a few weeks ago. And notices send a signal to the field that we're about to fund this. So sometime this summer, you will see a funding opportunity announcement addressing suicide ideation and how to reduce that in youth from underserved populations. Again, critical area that we need your help with. So the last quick thing is that if you are a full-time researcher, NIH has a loan repayment program, and there's 5 different areas offering up to about $35,000 a year for 2 years, and then it's renewable, so you could get a total of 4 years. So about 1,600 researchers are funded annually. So you have to put an application together, and you have to have a pilot project that you're going to be collecting some data on. But it's a 50% success rate, which is incredibly high. So people, sometimes people quit. They put it in once, but keep putting it back in. So just FYI, that's something. The last thing I want to talk about that fits our learning objectives anyway is we have a lot of training programs and scientific meetings that I want to alert you to. If you are a researcher, we have a great program if your area is in what I work in child and adolescent services research and prevention and interventions. And this is the Summer Institute. It's like a 5-day classroom type training. Now we've done it virtually in the last year and this year as well. But we get applications in February. We're just reviewing them now. We'll accept about 18 fellows. And then there's our classroom. And then they're paired with a mentor, and that's someone who has successfully been awarded NIH funding before. And they work with them for a year to help write a competitive application. So we've funded, they've really had pretty good success rate. And so this is a really neat training program. Another one is the Implementation Research Institute, similar to CHIPS, but it's a 2-year program in that they come back, each cohort will come back a second year. and continue to work on their program or their applications. The wonderful thing of why I'm telling you about this is the IRI is run out of George Warren Brown School of Social Work, and a wonderful leader in the field, Enola Proctor, is the champion of IRI, and that's, she is someone that has a seat at the research table at NIH. So this is a neat model. That could be something down the road for our school, this school. The last part of our, the piece about scientific meetings is for everyone, not just researchers, but everyone. And I'm so glad Barbie raised the idea of doing the importance of research in communities of looking at ecological issues such as water. Because if you go to our NIMH webpage under news and events, you'll see that coming up on March 18th, we have a researcher who is going to present about the lead water crisis that happened in Flint, Michigan. And she will talk about her research and her efforts to discover the truth in her fight for justice. So this is something that's right in line with some of the issues that we all are grappling with. And it's a way to see how research has probably made an impact in highlighting this as an issue. Two more meetings I want to tell you about. And our branch where I work, we sponsor this big conference every other year. And it's mental health services research. And we have probably about 300 or 400 people attend this. You get to hear from researchers and see what they're doing and hear about the latest findings. It's down the road from Baltimore, and I want more of a presence from this school to be there. And it's free. You can attend free. And the other neat thing is we attach a one-day workshop to this for new investigators. So it's something that I'd love to see this school take advantage of. The last meeting I want to tell you about is our DNI, it's NIH-wide, the Dissemination and Implementation Science Conference. Typically it's every December. It's a couple days, and they're probably going to do it virtually this year. But again, it's a big conference. So you kind of get to see what folks are doing and what's working, what's successful, what are the challenges. That's a great way to meet other folks that are in this field. So the last piece I want to talk about is where I sit at NIH. I have seen over the decades very few researchers, social work researchers, applying for applications at NIH. And our school has been incredibly successful with other federal agencies, but it's been tough at NIH. And as a result, other disciplines are stepping up to the table to work with the populations that we serve. And sometimes they're doing it accurately and doing it well, but sometimes they're not. And that's where we need to step in. And I invite you to step in. So the next lesson is that few social workers, researchers are leading the charge and driving the direction of where research should go. I really want you to think about how you might play a role. The other thing I was really curious about of kind of how to gain some clarity about this with our school. And back in 2019, I collaborated with Charlotte Bright and Jen Knapp to collect some data from our own school and looked at the time frame between 1995 and 2018, almost 150 graduates we had. And the gist of what we found, the data indicated that 14 graduates submitted applications to NIH and other federal agencies that we work with. Unfortunately, it's not the Administration of Children, Youth, and Family, and that's where this school has a huge footprint in. But this is NIH generally and a few other agencies. And only 4 graduates have been funded by NIH or SAMHSA. Now, this is typical for all schools, nearly all schools of social work. There's only a handful that are really taking the lead at the NIH and contributing really actively. But the other important thing I want to raise that I found that I was really surprised at was that most graduates only submitted once. If you know anything about NIH funding, you have to submit at least 4 or 6 times. You can't quit. It's not how it works. You've got to keep going. And, it made me the lesson for me is when I've talked to folks, I've talked to other deans about this, maybe do social workers have the perception that their ideas are not as worthwhile, or that they don't have access to a research infrastructure that can support them? So these are questions that I kind of give back to you as we kind of think about discussing these over the next few minutes. But this is kind of what I wanted to share. And there's a few recommendations I have for schools of social work, similar to having mentors and really dedicating time and incentives to really pushing getting competitive applications, because we need more social workers to apply and prepare. It's a long game. It really is. And this way, if we can do that, we can really have a seat at the research table and bring these dollars back to our communities. So as I close, I just want to thank you for your time. I invite you all to set some bold goals and thoughts about how you will deliberately use research in creative ways for this year. And then I'll just want to say, hopefully, both of our presentations today have sparked your curiosity, and I'm looking forward to hearing your ideas during our discussion. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Denise. Really, really appreciate that. I know you like me to call you Denny. Denny.
Yeah,
Really.
oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Oh, wow. I mean, I'm telling you, my heart is so full. My intellectual heart is so full this morning with the remarks and the information and the value that you added to our social work perspective to all of us this morning during homecoming. Fellow alum, we are going to take a 10-minute break. 10-minute brings us at 11. Let's come back at 11:15. 11:15, we'll do that, round it off. So everybody, please take a break, stretch, finish your breakfast, get some more coffee, whatever it is that you need to do. Keep your questions coming in the chat. I'll be keeping an eye on those even as we break, and we look forward to regathering at 11:15. We will reconvene in 1 minute. Barbie and Denise, when you're ready, you could both turn your cameras on. All right. Great. Okay, everyone, we're back together. I don't know about you, but whew, I have a screen open with books that I'm going to order. I have the chat box open. I have the Q&A box open. So you guys have just already poured so much into our alum today. So thank you again. There are questions in the chat. There are questions in the Q&A, and I'm going to just kind of go back and forth and pose some as we go along, if that's okay. Perfect. So Barbie, the first one is, are you a part of any groups that help focus on equity and correcting the wrongs in society? And are there groups that you would suggest for those of us interested in doing that type of work?
You know, I'm sure the best thing to do, usually when I personally, when I have a need to be met, I usually will start asking people around me to help start forming groups. I will start with my peer group, but on top of my head, I don't know particularly any specific groups. But SWR at the National Association's Maryland chapter, Social Workers Unraveling Racism, is a committee that I am co-chairing. And we are doing a lot of work around educating social workers around anti-racism issues. And we do workshops, we provide panels, we do discussion, we do supervisions, a lot of different things. Thank you, Tanya. And Tanya is a member of SWR. So we've been around for 6 years. We were formed due to the response to the murder of Freddie Gray. And we thought that it was important that social workers be on the front line in dealing with racism. So that's something that I've been a part of for some time. And again, we meet every 4th Tuesday of the month. So if you're interested in knowing a little bit more about what we do, please check us out.
Oh my gosh, because that was my next question, because I did not have it in my notes. I was going to say, what is SWR? I just said SWR when I introduced you, and I was like, it's not in my notes, it's not in my notes. So yes. Thank you so much. And I asked Tanya to spell it out for us. And yeah, so the last Tuesday of the month, you said?
Yes, it's usually the 4th Tuesday. I'm sorry. Let's say the 4th, because sometimes there's a 5th week or sometimes. So it's the 4th Tuesday of each month.
Perfect. And other members, other colleagues who are here with us today, if you know of other such groups, please put them in the chat. This is another thing that we do during our programs, is we like to share information. But if you do that, please put what area, because virtually people could be from anywhere. So put what area you're working in. My next follow-up question to you, Barbie, and then I'll have a question for Denny, is the Oakland Mills group. I put in the chat that Oakland Mills, I'm from Columbia too, by way of Baltimore, like most Colombians when I moved there at my age. The great Baltimore migration to Columbia. But so I'm very familiar with Oakland Mills. But how do you think people should go about starting such an organization, because that is kind of what we need. We need these grassroots from the bottom up organizations. Like one of my colleagues just started one for Black female lawyers, right, on Facebook, just start, and all of a sudden she had hundreds of members overnight. So this is the time to take those bold moves. And so if you had like 3 tips to give people, you already mentioned a few, but if you have any other ones.
Well, the interesting thing about Oakland Mills local leadership team, it was actually an initiative that was started out of Howard County government under the local children's board, the local county human resources department. And they said Oakland Mills is going to be a model village to see if we can help our community members and see if this Oakland Mills leadership team can basically uplift the community in Oakland Mills. So that started about 4 years ago, possibly, maybe or so. And what we're trying to do now is to kind of be our own and on our own program without being under the county, because that, again, as we know, there's a lot of barriers there. And then, you know, us trying to ask for money and then they don't want to give us any money. So we are now working on how to make ourselves more financially stable at this time. So there's always people in the community that is looking to belong. And it's just a matter of starting just giving a local call. And one place to start is a church if you belong to a church. Or again, we have a lot of services in the community. So if we work at a local hospital, I mean, that's again, another way as social workers that we can step out in the community and say, hey, you know, I think we can maybe start working on something within our community if you live in that community. So I think it's just a matter of just start talking about it. And you may realize that a lot of people are looking for something very, very similar. The one thing I didn't add about in my talk is that Oakland Mills is also a large immigrant area. And so it's also important that when we think of developing community programs, that we have to think about who are we representing, who's in that community, and what are we doing to make sure that we are going to reach out to everyone in the community and not just those select few.
Thank you so much, Barbie. Barbie, I'm going to move it to Denny, but while I do that, if you could put in the chat, if you like, your contact information. Some people have asked for that. And also, I know for a fact that as we all do, folks are always looking for diverse clinicians. So if there are any diverse clinicians in the room providing services, counseling services, therapy services, if you want to put your contact in the chat as well, we would welcome that. We would welcome that this morning.
Sure.
All right, Denny, I'm going to come over to you. This is a great question. How did your experience at an HBCU inform your work with the African American community and other marginalized groups? And what messages do you give to mentees? And could you please give us alumni, current students, on how we need to approach our clients with this in mind? So how do you work with mentees, and how, you know, what lessons should we learn from you?
Wow, that is a fantastic question. I got to find out who was the brilliant person that asked that. That's great.
Tanya, it was Tanya.
That was a great question. Back in the late 80s, I was at Howard University, and it was an amazing experience in that I raised my awareness in so many ways about privilege and how to hone my way of being and my passion to level the playing field. I'm always about fairness, and that's my mission in life. Wherever I go, it's just kind of, everyone should have access to good services, and that's why everyone should have access to evidence-based services. And that's where I'm a public servant. I really believe that. So wherever I've really tried to figure out ways, how do I elevate my voice, not just my voice, but others' voices, so that they're level in some way or even more powerful than mine. So that's what I've done with my mentees and my families I work with, of trying to find ways that they get a fair shot at the quality services. Everyone deserves that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. This is sort of a combination of a theme in the thread of questions, right? How do we, like, how many social workers are involved? First, this is a specific question, then I'll add the other ones. Do you know how many social workers are involved in the grant review panels at NIH?
That's another great question. And I'm so glad someone raised that, because the only way you get on a review panel is if you've successfully received NIH funding. So, and that they want to know that you're able to conduct a high quality research project so that you can be a peer review, to really adequately assess someone else's application. So when we do have quite a few, I don't want to say, I want to see more. I'd say perhaps there's 1 or 2 on a panel of 18 to 30. But that's a great question. That's why if we can get more researchers in the door, social work researchers in the door, then you can be part of the powerful group of folks that find an application meritorious.
So, and thank you, Denny, for that. There's a theme about, I guess, the lack of social work role. I think you've kind of addressed it if you saw the questions in the chat, right? There's this theme, I mean, in the Q&A, there's this theme around what should we be doing to sort of hold our own in the world of NIH, given that we are a very large, somebody said the largest professional organization that makes up mental health services, but not included in things like you said, the review panel, like we should, but you answered that question. But also some conversation around the fact that social workers are not involved in making changes or addressing issues with the DSM and that sort. So I think it's really, I would chunk this into us not having a seat at the table and what kind of leverage our power based on our numbers and influence to have a bigger voice or better voice at NIH.
Yeah. I mean, there are a handful of schools of social work that have a formula down of how to do this. You've got George Warren Brown School of Social Work. You've got University of Washington in Seattle. You've got NYU. There's a handful of schools that have found a way to do this, and it's building the pipeline, really inviting, diverse group of social workers to get excited about research, which is hard. I mean, when you think about what calls you into the field in the first place, I mean, it's that spark in your eye of helping people. You want to help folks. And then research is a long game. It takes a while to really see those results. So it's how do you attract more folks into the pipeline so that they develop into researchers that can then have influence in lots of different ways, whether it's with other researchers, with your families that you're working with to get them resources through a research funded grant. So there's lots of neat ways, but some folks are doing it, some schools are doing it well, and I would invite folks to look at them to see what's working for them. School, Johns Hopkins, it's not a school of social work, but they have it down of how to get funding with their public health students. So, it's looking at different models and trying to figure out what would be a good fit for this school and other schools of social work.
So I think what I hear you saying then, Denny, is schools also have to be cognizant and be prepared and have a plan to make sure that we are preparing students, at the master's level to move into research. Do people need to have PhDs to do research?
Well, so there's research, federal research on lots of different levels. So it's not just NIH. There's the Office of Children, Youth, and Families, so Children's Bureau, and those are more program evaluation. So it's things that have already been proven to be true that work, and now you're testing it in different settings. So you're doing a program evaluation. At NIH, we're usually interested in developing and testing new initiatives, new interventions. So there's some differences in what some of the different funding sources are. So NIH has a different level of scientific rigor than others. So that's been some of the problem,
Yes,
yeah.
Thank you for that. Denny, you had really great slides on some of the funding coming up and some of the conferences coming up. And I was wondering, while I spent a second talking to Barbie, if you had any direct links that you could put into the chat, if that's possible, that'd be great. Some folks ask for that. Or just put the title of the slide and then people can maybe Google it and find it either way. Does that sound okay? All right. Barbie, so people loved your use of the metaphor of groundwater. I believe that's what you said, right? Like, can you just talk a little bit more about, your use of that concept in the work in which you use that in doing community work, or that we should be really looking at that more?
Well, again, to better to understand, and if, like I said, the Racial Equity Institute has, if you go to their website, they talk, that's where that concept came from, is groundwater, to better understand racism and how it works. So if you think about our surface level, right? We have the wells, we have our lakes and things like that, that is the surface water that we typically see. And then sometimes we don't realize that that water actually comes from underground. Our real source of water is under the ground.
Yeah.
And so when a river, lakes, whatever water sources, Flint, Michigan is an example, right? When it is in the, when all these waters are affected, it's usually because there is something that is happening in the groundwater. There's something underground that is getting into the system and affecting everything, all the other water sources on top. And so we have to look at racism in that way, because we tend to kind of just look at the surface about racism, about issues that are happening, just like we talk about what's happening in the streets and police murdering Black and brown people. That's a surface issue, but underneath that is the issue of police reform, right? Is that we have to reform police policies, police action, to be able to stop what's going on the surface. And so that is the concept of the groundwater. And the movie I use, like I said, I've seen that movie, I don't know how many times. I love that movie. Anyway, you sit on the couch and I just watched that movie. So, I mean, that was a huge example of, that just came to me while I was thinking about social work in the community. It's like, hold it, that's it right there. And if you go back and watch that movie, that is a huge example of that they thought that the bad guys thought if they just, they thought only that surface water is the issue. And if people were dying, especially brown and Black people, nobody's going to care, right? But but the real issue is that was going into the groundwater. So eventually that was going to spread throughout Africa, into the ocean, into other parts of the world. And that was the main issue. And so that they had to stop it. They had to do something different, more dramatic, to be able to stop that spread. And that's what racism is, that it will continue to spread. It will continue to be a part of our system if we don't go deeper in changing the policies and practices that we do.
Thank you for that. Thank you so much for that. Okay, Denny, I had a question. So in the 1990s, I remember one of my few times using research directly in my practice, forensic practice, we were looking at East Baltimore, particularly Lexington Terrace. And as we started looking at Lexington Terrace, we started finding research around Lexington Terrace. And as we talked to the researchers, they informed us that really their findings came out to talk about risk factors, right? But they really went in to talk about AIDS and HIV. It was the CDC. This is what they wanted to study. But when they got connected, they did all this pre-work and got all this money, as you can imagine, to do this work. And when they finally though went into the community was like, we don't want to talk about AIDS and HIV. We want to talk about violence. We want to talk about drug use. We want to talk about the groundwater. We want to talk about the groundwater. We want to talk about no playgrounds. We want to talk about lack of food and quality of education. And from that, an entire journal, and I think the Pediatric Medical Journal, came out to talk about Lexington Terrace and other projects and so forth. So I'm dating myself with that research. But anyway, do you feel like the research community has gotten better at that? Or is there still work that needs to be done? And is there a role for folks here with us today who are not research lovers, but who are practitioners and out in the field and are the experts in the field to maybe partner better together? Is there anything being done around that?
It's a great question. You're absolutely right. And it's a great example of, here you have this incredible infrastructure that probably would work in another community, but this community was not involved in the development or offered any input at any point. And then it's thrust upon them. This isn't meeting our needs. This is not what we need. And that's what, I'm thrilled to report the last decade, NIH has been big on including, stakeholder involvement, because that's the thing, you develop these evidence-based practices, but if people aren't going to use them, what's the point? So if you can develop these with the input of families and practitioners at the get-go to say, well, this would work in maybe another setting, maybe in Iowa, but Baltimore, here's what we need, so that you can adapt things. And that's what kind of like the Family Navigator was telling you about, that there's a bunch of different components, but maybe there's some components in some urban settings with various different groups, so that you could kind of pick these, you have a package, but maybe you can add these components so that it's a better personalized fit. But that's really bringing everyone together at the beginning of even before you develop a project or write an application. And as Barbie was talking about some of the groups that she's been working with, wouldn't it be great if they could partner perhaps with this school to write some grants together, and everyone would be involved at the get-go. Here's even the practitioner might say, here's what I think they need, but the family would say, yeah, that's good, but I really think we need this. And you could keep building on that and coming up, it's like baking a cake, there's lots of different ingredients, but you want the right ones to really fit that community. So perhaps the school can, work on a research project. And I know they've done this before in many ways. I know Diana Pamphlos's Family Connections and some of the great stuff she's done in the past, and bringing communities together to participate and actively work on that. But there's more that could be done, and there's more dollars out there, and I want this community to get them. So
yeah. So let's kind of break it down for folks like me. If Barbie has this project, let's use the Oakland Mills project, and the Oakland Mills project comes together and it's like, you know what, this is great. Like, if anybody knows anything about this community, it's a planned community. Now they have a planned intervention for part of a planned community from the beginning, right? That has grown and become diverse. And so is there like, are there any ever like question and answers or contact people for people who don't even know where to start, but know like NIH might be interested in this? We've had a high level of suicides in our community. Is there a way to connect that way?
Yes. So what typically, if you want to apply to NIH funding, it's best to partner with an academics institution like the School of Social Work, or there's other groups that are out there that are more research based. But the best way this way you submit a stronger application, but you would partner with an academic setting. And so, for instance, that suicide funding announcement, that notice I was talking about, that's going to come out this summer. So it gives a signal to tell everyone, get your teams together to talk about what's unique about your community and what kind of intervention would you recommend? What kind of prevention intervention, or what kind of intervention as kids are identifying that they may be at risk, or they're particularly with the COVID pandemic, we've got a lot of kids struggling, or adults struggling with, the impact of the pandemic and with racial inequities. This is a tough time. And is there a way that perhaps, Barbie's group could work with some researchers from the university to try to identify some of these needs to reduce so this FOA is youth suicide prevention, that maybe there's a way to develop a research plan and develop an intervention that you'd like to test out.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, thank you. I don't know if you guys are keeping an eye on this chat, but this chat is on fire.
Oh, gosh. No, I'm not. Sorry, I can't multitask.
I know.
Not you guys, everybody else, because I'm having a hard time keeping up, but I just want to say the chat is on fire. Okay. So I'm going to take a moment. All right. Who is appointing the representatives in the community? Who are these leaders accountable to? I think that's regards to the Oakland Mills program, and maybe it just gives us a way to look at this, if people want to create such a model. Like, how do people get involved in that Oakland Mills organization, and or were they appointed by, say, the county executive when you first started?
Well, how that started is, I mentioned Shisha Johnson of the Jacaranda Center. So she already had establishing agency, right, organization. And so when the county was like, okay, we're gonna try to improve some villages here in Columbia, and I guess they put a call out in terms of a grant funding, if anyone was interested in starting this pilot program. Tisha and her program, they applied, they got the reward to do so. And then she started, her first place where she started, which is usually a center of communities, is the schools, is our schools. And so she started actually with the Oakland Mills schools, both the elementary and middle school and high school, because every village in Columbia, let me say about Columbia, Columbia has villages, right? Interesting that you used the term villages. And you know, as we know, there are planned communities. I think there's 6 of them. But anyway, Oakland Mills, as I said before, due to a lot of policies and dictatorship, and has cut it in such a way where mostly in our community, you have people who rent, where you have the apartments and the townhomes, not people who own homes. Some parts do. The part that I'm in a own homeowner part, but across the street, that's mostly all rentals. So that's where she started. And what she did was she did a survey. She went to the school and asked the school if she can do a survey to find out what the needs are in the community. And as she did the survey, people responded and they asked her, what are you doing? And she said, hey, I'm here to help your community. Well, how can I get involved? And so it was just people from the community. You know, I went to, I don't know, some kind of outdoor thing they were doing. And it's like, what are you doing? She said, oh, we're trying to develop a community program to help improve Oakland Mills. Are you interested? Let me see. And I signed my name up. And before I know it, I was involved. I don't think it's not so much about that leaders will rise out of our efforts. And one thing that happened, I can say a leader did rise. Another woman in our community who is an office manager in one of the apartment complexes, she now is on the Oakland Mills Community Board. You know, we have never had a Black woman on our board before in our Columbia Association. She's one of the first on our board. And this is because of her work through our Oakland Mills, because she was part of our team. And because of her work, now she's on the board. And so this is going to influence more what happens in our community. So leaders will rise out of getting together and remember, communities is common purposes, background and interests. That's all you need to be able to come together. And like I said, leaders will rise out of that. And so what Tisha's actually doing is not necessarily a leader. Like I said, she's hands-off in a lot of ways. She just teaches the community how to work for themselves. One wonderful thing she did was with the money that was getting from the county is that online program called with all the courses, Udemy, is that what it's called? UDEMY. She opened that up and said, pick 5 courses that you want to learn. Mm-hmm. And learn it, and then come back and tell us what you learned about that, the other members in the group. You didn't have to give a full speech, but just something that you learned from that. And a lot of people in our community never had an opportunity to have a course of that nature, but they've learned a new skill, and everyone learns a new skill. And so that's how you can, this is how Oakland Mills looks like for now, right? This is what we've been doing. So I don't know if I really answered the question, but I just think leaders will rise out of your building, right? I think leaders will rise out of that.
Yeah, you just remind me that sometimes we have to create space for people to be able to bring their gifts to the table. Given the founding, I'm so shocked that this woman was the first person of color to serve on a board. To be quite honest, I shouldn't be, but I am shocked. But you know, I'm reading these transformation tables, and one of the things in our material it said is, you know, people change when sometimes when they hurt enough that they want to change, or they change when they've been impacted enough that they're motivated to change, or you give them what they need to change, right? That you provide them with the materials to, or the space. And I feel like that's what both of you represent today, giving people the space, giving people the understanding understand when people hurt that that's the time. It's not the time to bury our heads in the sand. That's not what social workers do anyway. But it also will allow other people around us the opportunity to feel motivated for change as well, right? So
Right.
that leads to this great question from Carol. I'm just going to read the whole question or the whole comment, Carol. I hope you don't mind. For most folks will clearly say that they are against racism. Yet when we challenge white supremacy culture, which is the basis of most institutions, that often sparks denial, resistance. But if institutions are not accountable to communities of color, nothing will change. How can social workers push for accountability, both from within and from outside of institutions? I think that both of our panelists today can kind of maybe, speak to that. So how do we hold our programs and our communities accountable if they, of course, are serving people of color, but not really focusing on this area? So Barbie, I'll let you respond, and Jenny, you might have something you want to add.
Well, we all know getting to that groundwater is a long way down there, right? And so, we're going to stumble, we're going to get lost, we're going to get, misguided, and that's expected, of course, in the society that struggles with dealing with this truth, right? And so, we just have to keep working and trying. And one way that I always keep coming back to is our policies. Right, we have to really look at the policies and the service that we're providing in communities. Are we really inviting the community, or are we having restrictions or telling them what to do and not really inviting them to the table for us to learn from them? And one of the ways we do that is to invite them on boards, to have community meetings in your agency, even if there isn't really reason to meet, but to say, hey, you can come, right? You can come here. And we don't do enough of that. And with institutions, again, is working on, just like we did here in the School of Social Work. We use our voices. We keep telling, this is what we need. We have to keep using our voices. We have to keep writing papers and having talks and having conversation and dialogues that keep saying, this is what we need. We need more diversity. We need more inclusions in our curriculum, in our courses, right? In our leadership, right? And these are the kind of things that we continue to ask for. And just because they say no, doesn't mean we stop. It just means we just find another avenue to say, hey, this is what we need. And so the ideal is to keep pushing for the things that we think are important. And most importantly is to look at our policies. Where in our policies do we find that we're hitting a wall and dealing with our community or within our institutions? And we have to say, well, if we're hitting a wall, then we may have to look at our policies and rewrite them. Those policies, as we know, sits on a shelf in a blue binder, and we haven't really look at them until somebody breaks a policy. Then all of a sudden we're flipping through these pages and copies and missing stuff. And why is that, right? That's part of the problem, right? And so we need to organize ourselves a little bit better. We need to educate ourselves, right? And most importantly, we need to advocate. It's all about advocacy. Should never stop doing it. It should always be a part of the work that we do as social workers.
I totally agree. And just to add on to some of Barbie's great comments there, at NIH, it's just brand new. A lot of us don't know much about it right now because it's the contours of this new initiative at the whole NIH level. It's called Unite. And it just came out on Monday. And so Francis Collins is our director, is pushing this forward. And we're trying to build committees on and getting this all together. But the goal is to address structural racism, not just at NIH, but at all the institutes that get money from us. So it's a big endeavor. We're not sure what it's going to look like. My guess is down the road, within a year or so, there will be more funding to enhance a diverse research workforce, but I'm not sure. But I want you to know there is an effort underway at NIH to really work on looking at the groundwater, at least at the NIH level, as well as at academic institutions that get our money, to see what are they doing to get more diverse researchers in to their projects, to get, so that's a new initiative. And I think it's kind of a stay tuned and see what's going to happen. And that's where this School of Social Work can perhaps maybe expand their pipeline.
I do want to, I just want to add one more thing to that also training, right?
Yes.
I mentioned the changing the lens. We have invited them to our SWER group to do 2 of their workshops with us. And so what I would like to do is to have all social workers trained in anti-racism, anti-Blackness work and issues. And this is something, and another thing that we get every level of our structural in our agencies, right, in our institutions, this training, then this is the first step, right? So they can no longer say, I don't know what you mean, I don't understand. Because if they were in a training, then they have some knowledge and some understanding, maybe not deep, but enough to say, you can't say that anymore because you've been at this workshop. You understand a little bit about what's going on and what's happening. So let's talk about this differently, right? In other words, this is how we push up against that wall, right? And training is one of those ways that we can do that by inviting people like Jackie and Suzanne from the Changing Lens that comes in and does this type of work to help us, educate us on things that we may not know. I mean, I've been doing this work for a long time, and working with Jackie and Suzanne, I learned some new things. I was like, oh, I didn't know that about, history particularly. I'm like, I didn't know this stuff is happening. I mean, it's amazing what we don't know. So be open to training. And that is another way that we can start to chip away at institutions that want to turn a blind eye.
Thank you so much. Anybody have the link to Changing Lens? Go ahead and put that in the chat.
Yeah.
Sarah,
can you help me with that?
Thank you. I figured you'd know something. Also, there were some questions around students linking up with faculty at the school for research. And again, faculty members, deans on the call. I don't know if you have any links that you could put in there or ideas, or maybe that's just something, Dean, for the future strategic planning, like how do students become familiar with the areas of research of the faculty members to link with them, or, making that more accessible to all students, which is promoting inclusivity versus just, I have a faculty member, she's my favorite, I'm going to work with her, right? But that all students are aware of this happening. Denny, do you think, and bear with us, everybody, we have about 12 more minutes. Do you think we'd ever get to the point where all grants say, what are you doing to ensure diversity and inclusion if we give you this money? Like, what part of your funding is going to be used for that?
Great question. And yes, it's being baked into all the funding announcements. Now, the reality is, how folks making sure, putting their feet to the fire to address it. Because some folks are better than others. But yeah, it's baked in. And so the catch is, on paper, it's all in there. It's just ensuring, and that's part of my job, is to ensure that they are following up on what they promised and signed their notice of award to do.
Thank you so much. So I wonder how evidence-based practice develop individual. Okay. Based on the evidence-based practice, I wonder how many evidence-based practices are developed by individuals of color versus research on children, families, and communities of colors. So I guess the research are based on the topic, and how do we change this dynamic if it is disparity in that area?
Great question. And I'd love to be able to answer that, like a clear answer for that. A number of evidence-based practices have been developed with families of color, yet they may not necessarily generalize to other groups. So that's part of what we want ongoing research to do, is to try to adapt and try to, like you experienced a while back with the HIV initiative. How can you meet the needs of each community? Because you do need adaptations, but you don't want to lose the components of what makes that treatment work. So that's what we want ongoing research to do. The other thing is, we do have diverse researchers in my portfolio, I oversee Michael Lindsay's work on suicide prevention, and he's been, working on trying to enhance engagement with African-American youth and trying, before you have the intervention, how do you put a component before that to enhance engagement first? And then once there's a commitment for engagement, then you do the treatment. So it's finding ways to bring in new researchers to come up with some creative approaches so that it meets the needs of the families we serve. And that's why I want researchers to do this, social work researchers to do this. I want, I have to be, I have to allow for all researchers, psychologists, others, but I want social work researchers to also be at the table because we know our populations in a way that others don't.
Speaking of the thread of diversity and inclusion, there's also been a thread embedded in recently is self-care and wellness. Denny, are there grants around, are we starting to look at the numbers around that for our profession?
It's a great, yeah,
and a research that's studying that.
At NIMH, it's more symptom-based, so depression, anxiety, however, there's another center, the National Center of, used to be called Alternative and Complementary Medicine, is now the National Center of Integrative and Complementary Health. They look more at wellness and other alternative approaches.
Great, so you guys heard it there. That's another area I think that we should be investing in, especially coming off of as we're moving through this pandemic, which I think will be with us for quite a while as well. I would like to close with this particular question, right? As we are talking about involvement overall, as we're talking about having more diverse involvement across our communities at all different levels, from the community to boardrooms, advice for folks on the call, on the Zoom call, who want to get involved at board levels, board of director levels, like what, do you have any insights for people to kind of navigate those worlds? I feel like sometimes people sit back and wait for somebody to call them. And that's also a plug for the alumni board, folks. Also a plug for the alumni board. We're always looking for members of the alumni board. So I feel like social workers, I don't know, we sit back and we wait for an invitation, right? Mm-hmm. But I find my other colleagues in other fields of professions, they go out and seek board of director appointments, right? So advisory boards, I think Barbie mentioned. So I just wanted to know just any personal advice around for us around really navigating and sitting at those tables.
It's a great question. And I kind of similar to the experience we found that social work researchers only apply once, or they reach out once to put an application in, and then they don't follow up, because other disciplines do that, and other groups will find ways to get on that board, and you're trying to figure out how do you reach out, how do you introduce yourself to folks that would know people in that area so that they can recommend you. I mean, is there certain ways that you can elevate your work, if it's clinical work or administrative work, that you can let people know what successes you've had, so that they can see you as someone that brings an expertise they need. So there's just trying to find ways to promote yourself. Social workers, we're more comfortable helping. We don't promote ourselves in a traditional way. I mean, that's just that's not my first instinct. But for us to be actively making an impact, we have to promote ourselves and get our passions known to the folks that can then get us involved. So
perfect. And as our chair of NASW Maryland, Barbie, what do you think?
Well, for me, it was a matter of my like you said, my passion, my interest, and mine was activism, right? And then I started it as the chair of Social Workers on Unraveling Racism with SWIR, and another co-chair is in the audience, that's Sarah Frizzell. And she actually started around the same time as I did, and so it's just a matter that I stayed with the connected with the board, and because I continue to be present, and kept showing up, I ended up as president. It was not as if I was like, I want to be president. It was never that. My activism got me here. And I have to trust that what I've been doing is the direction that I should be going, right? And so if we look for the things that we like to do, that we're interested in doing, we see holes, we have holes throughout our communities and places. If we see those holes, go step in them, right? I'm sure once you do that, you will find that, yes, there's so much work to be done. At the same time, there's so much change that can happen. So it's not so much that, I understand boards are important, but I also think that starting from where you are is always a good way to get somewhere else, because before you know it, you know somebody. Like Denny, I found out we did know each other way back in the day.
Isn't it great?
I know, in the 90s with Sexual Assault Center, because I was at PG County. I was a therapist at the Sexual Assault Center. And we knew each other. And I actually had my internship at, guess what, NIH, right? So
What do you know?
What do you know, right?
Yep.
So you never know, just going in places where you're comfortable, that you're interested, who you might meet, right? And where that may take you. So I just say, just step in the spaces that you want to be a part of, and not try to struggle in terms of, I got to get in the top position to make a change. I don't think you have to be there to make a change. Just think about Oakland Mills. That is the members of the community. There is no one that is being paid, except for Chisha, to do that work. It's all volunteer. And so I think that would be another way of looking and approaching the
you guys
situation.
just really imparted words of wisdom right there. It wasn't a question. Actually, we practiced none of these questions, but I know that was a question you probably didn't anticipate me asking you. But thank you for responding. I believe that you blessed somebody with those words this afternoon. We just went into the afternoon. So, ladies, listen, I thank you so much. If everybody could just clap your hands virtually, just say thank you in the chat for our amazing, amazing panel. Again, thank Krishna, thank Shantae for who reads the continuing education screen, for the work behind the backgrounds, and thank the Dean for being here today, and our previous Dean Barth, for also joining us. And Dick Cook, I gotta give him a shout out, my first supervisor at the University of Maryland, who knows all about and taught so many of us, right, about community activism and being involved in the community and adding value in the communities that we serve. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to turn it over to Krishna for some closing remarks, and enjoy the rest of your day. Don't hang up though.
Yeah, please don't hang up. So I just want to thank you all again. It's so funny. I realized I never introduced myself in the beginning, but at this point, we're at the end. So, but I wanted to thank you all for serving as our speakers today. Thank you again, Barbie and Denny. You have been awesome. Again, making, I feel like, our homecoming a success. And also to kick off our 60th anniversary. So that's always great. And thank you, Lori, for being a great moderator, and always my partner in show when it comes to Zoom world, where we are able to move through these Zoom issues as eloquently as we can. But I just wanted to thank you all for attending today, attending homecoming. Thank our speakers, moderator, and our staff. Thank you, Shantae. Shantae is on now from navigating through 2 webinars. Thank you, CPE, for all your hard work as we do these Zoom meetings. And then I also wanted to bring everyone's attention to, you may have received a save the date about our upcoming Thirds lecture, which is going to be on April 19th. And so please, you'll be seeing some emails about that, in terms of, I hope you can join us then. And I think that's it. I think that's all I have. So I just wanted to make sure I make those announcements. So thank you again. And Shantae is going to talk to you about your evaluations.
All right, thank you, Krishna. Thank you, speakers. I just wanted to say that you can go back to your account and you can hit the orange button that says certificate. It will ask you if you pay for CEs. You can hit that, fill out the evaluation, and then you can download your certificate and print that. So thank you. Enjoy your weekend. We hope to see you again.
Have a good day.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.